Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just putting back together the final bits and pieces onto my GSPD. The engine's been together since last Friday morning, but I've had some customer stuff and some other things I wanted to do on the bike while it was apart, tidying up the brakes and some other bits and pieces. Just occurred to me as I was doing this that maybe it might be interesting to people who haven't seen it before. You'll know that the front main bearing carrier dropped its roll pin previously, and we fixed that. Very significant thing, because the oil in these bikes comes out of the oil pump, which is situated at the rear bottom of the engine, gets pumped up through the main bearing galleries, and the main oil feeds back through the engine are actually out of the front main bearing carrier. There are a lot of holes drilled down through the block into various places to get oil into places where it has to go, and it's a bit like the carbies. There's a fairly interesting set of drillings that they have to complete on each of these blocks to get that to work. I've primed up the engine now, and you know, when I put it back together, obviously you oil everything inside copiously as you're putting it back together, make sure that nothing's tight, but that wasn't what I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you how much oil can get pumped around here, and some little tip that you might want to take note of if ever you're fiddling around with your rocker gear. Even when you adjust your tappets, take the plugs out and give the thing a burst on the starter motor, just to turn it over and get the oil running out of your rocker gear, and have a look and make sure that the flow is good. That is an indication of the overall health of the oiling system of your engine. So it comes out down the back here. There are two O-rings in the top of the block. They are seated so that when they go into the recess in the bottom of the block, the inside of them clears the studs. So the oil comes down the two top studs on either side, runs down the studs into the bottom of the rocker block, down this rocker shaft, which on this bike, all that's been replaced, everything on the heads has been replaced. There's a drilling in there that takes the oil out down through the center of the rocker shaft at the top and floods it out around the needle roller bearings in the top of the rocker, and then lets it precipitate down through the bottom roller rocker out into the rocker covers, and then back down the pushrod holes here at the bottom. That's where the oil flows back down into the sump. So what I want to do, and what I have done before I attempt to start the bike, which is still an hour or two away, I've got to put some bits and pieces back together, new air filter and stuff. But I wanted to prime the system up, make sure that all the oil was getting to where it had to go, and I just thought I'd show you how much oil should come out of these when it's running as it should. So I've turned the ignition on. Now you can see, excuse me, I'll just turn the ignition off again. There is a tremendous amount of oil flowing out of there, considering that the engine is only turning it over at maybe 40 or 50 RPM on the starter motor, and it's idling at 1,000. So you can just imagine how much oil is flowing around in this engine when it's running. That's really, it's the oil and air interface that keeps the bikes cool, not just air. The oil travelling around through that alloy absorbs heat, and it goes out into the head part where there's a lot of fins, and it gets cooled as it travels down there. These bikes also, of course, have got an oil cooler on them. One of these days I will get around to putting mine in the middle at the front, but for the moment that's where it's been for the last 10 or 11 years, so I guess it doesn't really matter that much at this point. So that's really what I wanted to show you. I just wanted to show you how much oil comes out of there, and how much oil should come out of there. If ever you're doing any maintenance on your bike, it would pay you to check and have a look. Ride safely, stay well.